Hello, everybody. This is Susan Clinton, and welcome to this episode of Tough to Treat. Today, we're going to be not revisiting, but another older patient, but revisiting a similar theme with back and leg pain, and just kind of listening to this patient's story and what's been going on with her and what her narrative is. And I think there's a lot of really kind of cool points in here, and we would love to get your feedback on it. So welcome to this episode of Tough to Treat. Thank you. Hi, everybody. This is Susan Clinton, and I'm here with Erica Mello, my partner, and we are Tough to Treat. Hi, Erica. You're welcome back from Russia.
Yeah, hi, Susan. Thank you. Yes, I'm over my jet lag now. It's amazing. 7 hours. 1 hour does me in, but 7 hours, it was crazy, but had a wonderful time, and it was nice to get away. So
that's great.
Yeah.
So we have a couple of announcements today. We're really excited to share that we have how many downloads?
God, we've got over almost 50,000 downloads, I think.
So thank you, everybody who's tuned in to listen. We're excited that we're reaching so many people.
Yeah,
and a lot of great reviews, which is really also helping our standings in iTunes and the various places. So keep sending the reviews and keep staying in touch with us and let us know what you want to talk about. And along those lines, a lot of people have reached out to us saying they'd like to meet, they'd love to do something together, they'd love to talk about some of their clients. And so we've had a couple of PTs on in the past that have brought patients to us. And as you know, our last podcast, we actually had a live patient who wanted to come on and consult with me as she's been working with Erica. So we kind of did that as well. We'll follow back up with her a little later on and see how she's progressing along. But so Erica and I are also announcing that we're going to be doing a couple of Tough to Treats on the road.
Yep.
And so if you're interested in a 1 or 2 day mastermind and working with us and just problem solving and critical thinking and, I don't know, looking at some things outside of the box instead of inside of the box, drop us a line, let us know, leave us a comment on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you may be finding our podcast, or just email us. And we'd love to hear from you and generate some ideas about where maybe some places. A couple of things we may have in mind are around CSM in February, or around the APTA Next conference in June. So we're kind of looking around at different places and different ideas. So we'd love to hear from you on that end as well.
Yeah, I mean, we would love to, because the podcast, and once again, I want to reiterate what Susan said. The reviews on iTunes have been amazing, and I can't thank you, and we both can't thank you enough for all of them, and it means the world to us. So feel free to continue along that line, and we do reach a lot of people with our podcast, and there's nothing like, at least in my opinion, getting together live with people and talking about clients and patients and getting some hands-on experience and talking to us to critically reason through patients. So, if you're around on those dates that Susan mentioned, email us, or reach us out on social media. My email is erica@ericamello.com. And Susan, what is your email again? I forgot.
Susan at embody-pt.com.
So that'll be great. And just register your interest and we'll take it from there. Okie doke. Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, shall we get to it?
Yes, indeedy.
All right. So today I have a client I'd like to present that I've thought came from a little bit of a unique background. She is in her 50s and quite fit, has been complaining of pain down the side of her leg for about 20 years.
Okay.
And she just has, so I'm going to place her automatically before we even get started on talking about her as a confronter. She's definitely not an avoider. She's a
Okay.
confronter. She just ignores everything and pushes straight through. So she's
Got it.
been going off and on with pain coming down the side of her leg about to the level of her knee for about 20 years.
What leg, Susan? Which side?
I'm sorry, her right side.
Got
So
it.
her right
Okay.
leg.
Okay.
She said that, she had a distinctive increase in symptoms over the last 6 months.
Okay.
So that's kind of like, why are you coming in? Because of this. I've had this chronic pain for a long time, and now distinctly over the last 6 months, it's gotten worse. It's down below the knee. It's on the side of my leg. It's worse at nighttime when I lay down to sleep. I don't really notice it during the day through activities. Again, she's a confronter. Or she's ignoring it or just pushing through it.
Right.
But it doesn't bother her like it does when she becomes sedentary, it really begins to bother her. So when she's standing for long periods of time, when she sits for any length of time, and or when she lays down at night, to rest, she finds it to be fairly uncomfortable.
Okay.
So she's done all the crazy stuff. She's rolled it out. She's stretched it. She said, I know that she used to be a runner. She's now a walker and very happy being a walker, but likes to walk 4 to 5 miles at a time. Likes to walk with her friends. That's kind of her social activity, and hasn't really been able to do that as much because she's so worried about what her symptoms are going to be. So she's a confronter that's really starting to edge into the area of avoiding.
Okay.
And pulling back from activities that she finds super enjoyable. So just kind of, asking a little bit more about her past history and some other things that are going on. She had a huge ACL repair. She said it was a huge one, like a really big one, 10 years ago. And they really didn't want to do it because they said that, at the time that they felt like she was too old. Which is one of the big things they keep telling people, if you're past a certain age, they're just not going to
do it.
Well, she insisted and found somebody to do it, but it was a big one. And she said that she had a long recovery afterwards, which changed her from running to walking, and walking was much more manageable. And, but she said it was a pretty big and long recovery. And then she said that over the last 8 to 10 months, they started doing an aggressive home improvement project at home. And I said, well, what does that mean? And she says, well, it means that I spend a lot of time on the ladder, leaning and painting. And up and down the ladders and redoing their entire home. And this has been going on for 8 to 10 months. Okay. And I said, that's interesting. And I said, and when did your pain start flaring up? She said, about 6 months ago. But I'd have to say, maybe in there. And I said, well, does it bother you when you do this? Oh, yeah, it hurts like crazy when I'm standing on the ladders, but I have to get this stuff done.
Got it. Okay.
So here we go, right?
She's prioritizing. The home is more important than the pain.
Right. Well, she just wants to get this thing done.
Right.
But she's convinced, through the years, she's heard all the stories. Your pelvis is out. Your pelvis is up. The way you stride, the this, the that, the whole thing. And so she's convinced that there's something inside of her. She goes, you know what? I just would like for somebody to get inside it and fix this. And I just can't find, nobody can really find out what's going on. They tell me a lot of things. So I know I don't walk right. I know I don't sit right. I know I don't do this right and that right. And I said, well, what does right mean to you? And she goes, well, a particular way that I should move or a particular way that I should be. And I said, well, what does it jive with you on that? And she said, well, I'm just not going to do it. I was like, okay. What if I told you you don't have to? And she was like, oh, well, why would you do that? And I said, well, because maybe there's another way to solve the problem.
Right.
If you tried these ways and it didn't work, let's don't go back and revisit that. Let's look at it from a different angle, if we could. Right. So we kind of talked a little bit about that. We talked a little bit about a neurophysiological response, just to kind of begin to lay that little bit of groundwork about, we're going to probably have to do a little brain training along with the movement stuff. But nothing, I didn't lay anything real big and heavy in there. I just talked about patterns. Right. I said, your movement center, your brain lays things down in patterns. That's how you can walk across the street. That's how you can talk with your friends while you're walking and you're not thinking about where do I put my foot down. And she goes, that's exactly why I didn't want to do all those changes people made for me, because I had to slow down and think about where my foot was going all the time, and that was driving me crazy. And I said, okay,
Mm.
I got you. So you can hear right here, we've got somebody who's a confronter. She wants to get her stuff done. She's very driven.
Yep.
And by the way, I would also give you that she's a very high achieving, thinker. So, we've got all of that together in one package here. And so she has some real ideas, and she's not afraid to share them about why she will and will not do things. And almost kind of in a little bit of defiance, which was fine with me.
Yep.
I'd much rather her, like I said, she's more on the confrontive side than the avoiding side.
Yep.
But anyway, so we had some talk about that, and talking about how your motor system lays things down in patterns. And I said, even though it's not a pattern that may be working for you anymore, or there's a pain output associated with that pattern, it's become a bit overprotective and not really protective to you.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
so I just kind of mentioned, I said, I wonder what would happen if you didn't push through the pain all the time, but you had different ways to move that didn't cause this to like keep
Mm-hmm.
going.
Yep.
And she kind of thought about that for a few minutes. I said, let's just see what happens when we start moving around. Let's first kind of figure out what we can figure out with this.
Mm-hmm.
So do you
Susan,
have any
was her
questions to that?
ACL? Yes, was her ACL on the same side or was it on the opposite side? Do you
Her
know?
ACL was on the same side, same leg.
Same side.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It was on the
So
right.
what does she do? Is she working?
Yeah. She works. She stands, she sits, she's busy, she's runs a department. She's kind of a,
Okay.
high functioning, high level
Got
person.
it. So
And her straight.
got it. So standing, sitting, walking, all bother her, but she pushes through them. And then it really is when she lies down and just has to lie there, that's when it's the worst,
So yeah,
correct?
well, prolonged standing and for
Yeah.
sure sitting increase her problems. Walking, not so much,
Okay.
but she does, she does feel some stuff with walking, but it's not so much. And after she gets going for a bit, she doesn't feel it.
So it's more
And
static positioning, like
yeah,
static standing,
yeah,
static sitting, and then standing on the ladder statically and moving.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly. And the standing and leaning, which kind of started
Yeah.
getting my attention here because now
Yep.
the symptoms have worsened over the last 6 months.
Yeah.
But this activity's been going on for 8 to 10 months.
Oh,
I'm just
totally.
trying to find out some other things that were going on in her life, and she has one kid's in college, and the other one just started college, and so there's whether it's stressful or not, there's changes afoot, and
Yes.
there could be pieces or parts that may or may not be working into it. But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, we actually just said let's see if we can't just deconstruct everything and take a look at your movement and actually see if we can come up with things that actually might be driving some of your symptoms,
Mm-hmm.
through movement.
Mm-hmm.
So, we kind of did some stuff. I said, just stand in your normal stance and just tell me how you feel. We were standing there talking for a few minutes, and then I said, how does this feel right now? So she put her hand along the side of her hip and she goes, I feel it in here. I said, okay, so what if you stood differently? Like, where are you on your feet? Well, I'm back on my heels. I said, okay, well, what? She goes, I always stand on the back of my heels. And I said, well, you're a shorter female like I am, and I call it short girl syndrome because we're going to stand back on our heels so we can look up to see, because otherwise we're not going to see half the world. So it's not a bad thing. It's just that, but if it's bringing your symptoms on, let's see what we can do to change it.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of played around with some stuff. She wanted to try shifting off to one leg. It kind of made a little bit of a difference. We did some other things, and I finally said, why don't you just shift forward, onto the balls of your feet, not off where your heels are coming off or you're falling, just shift slightly and see. And that felt really good. She liked that. So that was really good. And I said, okay, so right away, here's something that you can do in one of your activities that really bothers you, that you can start to change it.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, this is funny because I've sat back on my heels for most of my life. And she goes, I bet I walk and run back there too. And
Yeah.
so she's figuring out her problems as we go, which is kind of
Right.
cool.
Yeah.
It's like, all right. So then we did some stuff, just looking at her trunk, bend over, squat, stand on one leg, all of those kinds of things. So it was interesting. As she bent over, things felt really good.
Yeah, that
You
makes
know, it
sense.
feels really good. She goes, but I think it's because I'm shifting forward on my feet now. So she's like
Oh,
onto this
yeah.
feet thing. It's like, well, I said, before we worry about why, let's just worry. Let's just think about what. Let's just think about the what right now and not the why.
Yep.
You know, what feels better? Shifting forward on your feet or shifting back? Does bending over feel good? Does it take your symptoms away? You know, yes, it took my symptoms away. So then she stood back up and she goes, oh, when I stand back up and I get in this position, I'm feeling it in my hip again. And so I just had her lean backwards,
Mm-hmm.
and that did not feel good at all. That brought the stuff right down the side of the leg
You
again.
mean back bend?
Yeah, back
Yeah.
bend. Sorry,
Yep.
back trunk backwards
Trunk
bending.
back bend. Got it.
So that, you know, that brought the pain right back down again. And then
Right.
we did some, you know, so we squatted. That felt actually, she goes, you know, I've been avoiding squatting because I thought it wouldn't be good for me. And I said, why? And she goes, well, because I just thought you're not supposed to bend your hip or your knee into positions that make them not feel so good. And I said, well, does it feel bad? She goes, no, it really doesn't bother me at all. And I said, okay, so what if you did this versus that partial, like pick this up off the floor? So she did. I threw a pillow on the floor and she picked it up. And I said, how did that feel? And she goes, well, it felt okay, not the best. I said, so now squat down and pick it up. And that felt better. I said, so you have some choices in movement here, which can be
Mm-hmm.
helpful. You know, so let's just kind of keep going. So just, you know, she's a walker. So I go straight over to, you know, and walking is what she wants to do. And it's like, you know, let's start looking at what's happening when you stand on one leg.
Right.
Because, you know, being able to stand and swing on one leg is important.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, she was really unable to load up her right leg without symptoms. She couldn't do it. She couldn't figure it out. Every time
Huh.
she stood onto her right leg, she had symptoms.
Yep.
And they were stuck, and she just goes, but it's mild, but I just feel it right here. So now she's kind of being mindful. She's really in
Yeah.
tune to it.
Yep.
So we went over to the wall and put our fingertips on the wall, and I put my hands on the side of her pelvis, and I just said the story I think I've talked about before on the podcast. It's like, we've got the headlights. Let's
Mm-hmm.
keep the headlights on the road. Right? We may have to shift lanes to the right or the left a little bit as you switch from right foot to left foot. You know, so the headlights may shift lanes, but I don't want you turning off the road or going sideways, you know,
Yeah.
like the car's tipping sideways. So let's
Mm-hmm.
keep it on the road here. And she really was unable to unweight her left foot and stand on her right foot, keep her fingertips on. She could not figure it out,
Wow.
and it caused pain every time.
Wow.
So yeah, it was very interesting. So I'll stop now and let you ask some questions.
Yes, so I'm wondering so with the one-legged standing, did she just could she shift the weight over and you sort of had like a side bend right modified, like almost like a Trendelenburg, or or she just literally couldn't load the right leg without symptoms? Does that make sense?
So she could, yeah, and that's a great question. There wasn't any Trendelenburg stuff going on. There was an overshifting on both sides. So she would
Uh,
overshift to the lateral part of her foot on the right side and the pelvis would
uh,
go over, or the left side. The left,
okay.
she could clean up pretty fast. The right side, she could not figure it out.
So she couldn't, so was her foot overworking in that position, or she just basically shifted her weight over to the right and
Yeah,
couldn't
her
stabilize
foot,
herself?
her foot wasn't overworking. She just simply had symptoms.
Okay. Okay.
So she could get there and she could hold it, but it would hurt.
Okay.
And so no
It,
matter what we did, she couldn't do it without having some sort of symptom come on.
got it. Okay. I find that interesting because walking doesn't bother her.
It does
And
in the beginning.
it does in the beginning. Okay. So, because whenever I have someone says to me, when someone says to me, I have an issue with walking, I always look at one-legged standing. And with her, it was worse at the beginning, but it eased. So I would think that one-legged standing would maybe be a little provocative, but she must adapt as she walks, or something happens as she walks when she offloads that foot. Do you know
Either
what I
that or
mean?
just by getting going, she feels better because of the
Yeah.
joints are moving. And
Right.
remember, this is a confronter. She just blows past it.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
she's been doing it for 20 years.
Yeah. So you almost wonder that if she's on the ladder and she's painting or doing something, she's shifted her weight to the right leg, right?
Exactly. And so that was the next question I asked her. I said, what happens when you're painting? I said, are you right or left-handed? And I'm right-handed. And I said, what hand do you paint with? My right hand. How do you stand on the ladder? Show me.
Yeah.
Onto her
Yeah.
right leg, side bent with her arm up in the air.
Oh my Lord, no wonder.
There it is.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Bingo.
as soon as she got into the position, she was like, oh. And I said, now, I said, I'm not going to tell you not to paint, but I am going to suggest, I wonder what would happen if you moved the ladder.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, if this would mean that you could sleep easier at night,
Mm-hmm.
would it be worth climbing down from the ladder, moving it over so that you're actually more having to lean to the left a little bit to the center? And then when you
Totally.
start going to the right, you feel that, could you come down off the ladder and change it again? You know, and
Yeah.
I get it. I get the whole painting thing. I know you just want to get done. But it's at this point, it's not worth it anymore because it's interfering with her sleep.
Yeah. Yeah. Because if she could move the ladder
Yeah,
and
because
she
their
could
symptoms
literally, yeah.
have spiked up, and this is again a new thing. So she's kind of looking at this like with this kind of thinking like, okay, so maybe all this new stuff that I've done and I get in these positions, it doesn't feel good. So now she was kind of going back to, well, what is it that's going on then? So, so anyway, back to the one-legged stance. We got her to the point where she could actually put her fingertips on the wall or put her fingertips on or her hands on the countertop, and she could actually just begin to unweight her left heel, keep the
And
toes down, and unweight the left heel.
how did you do that? How did you get her to do that? Just
We
practice?
started, you know, she kept wanting to lift the leg up, lift the leg up, lift the leg
Yep.
up, and it kept hurting. I said, put the leg down, just let the knee bend.
Yeah.
I can do
Got it.
that. Okay, let the knee bend and let the left heel come up just slightly.
Got it.
And that was okay. And I said, that's where you work.
Yep.
I said, let's don't keep pushing into it. Let's find the edge of this and stay along the edge and not push into the symptoms. And the same thing with the painting. So here's my hypotheses that, you know, I came up with is that the problem for her is somewhere along the line she had, you know, through some sort of compression or side bending or something into one of her little joints in her back, set up a sensitivity that's been there for a long time.
Yep.
You know, she moves beautifully. Even though she has pain, she can still back bend. She can still side bend. You know, she like, you know, like I said, she's you know, fairly fit. You know,
Yeah,
it's
she's
not
50.
like it's not. She's in her 50s.
50s.
Yeah, but you know, she's fairly fit and she's, you know, she's active. You know, so it's not like she's, you know, not have these big movement restrictions anywhere. She just doesn't. But she's irritable now. So what's happened is we've had something very sensitive for a long time actually move back into kind of an acute irritability phase. You know, so before she could kind of manage it and move through it, and it didn't really bother her life, and she didn't really care, quite frankly. You know, it's what she told me. But now it's to the point where she can't manage it.
Right.
But we've moved into a much more irritable situation at this point, which is a lot more acute.
Yeah.
You know, or acute subacute than it is this old chronic, you know, kind of happening thing that didn't go down her leg all the way, that kind of just hung out on the side of the hip and the side of her leg. And she had these beliefs that it was a IT band. And
God help us.
or a pelvis that's out, or something else. And, you know, it's nothing but neural tension because, you know, so all I did was I had her stand and I said, cross your leg over your other leg. And that made her symptoms come on too.
Yep.
And it was worse when she crossed left over right because it made her side bend right.
Yes. Yes.
It was a little better when she crossed right over left because she side bent left.
Correct.
So, you know, but it still bothered her because we're still getting that neural load.
Right. So it's interesting because you're not going to throw her into that 70-year-old spinal stenosis scenario because that's not her, right? Even, you know, so looking at the whole person, I like the one-legged standing because people, you look at the aggravating, you know, position sitting. Why does sitting bother her? I don't know. You know, maybe it's a sensitized, you know, it's, you know, when I look at, if someone has a problem sitting, I look at a squat and you did, and it was fine. Right. So standing is, you know, standing is probably the heart. I don't know, the main thing, at least what would be for me, because the ladder, the painting, that's a change in her life, and that is you have to, point your finger at that movement pattern that she's
Mm-hmm.
introduced, and you can compensate until you run out of options, and old sensitivity has come back, and
Right.
it's really common,
Mm-hmm.
especially when people are like, well, I've had this forever, and I'm like, yeah, but you're doing something differently and you're
And now
getting
it's,
symptoms while you're doing it.
yeah, so now it's become irritable again. So
Right.
I kind of gave her the little story about we have two sides. You're either in the calm stuff downside or you're in the build stuff upside. And I said, right now, you are definitely in a calm stuff downside.
Mm-hmm.
This needs to calm down because you've seen what's happened as it's gotten more irritable. It
Mm-hmm.
hasn't, it's, we can't build it. We can't impose any kind of, because she was going, well, what exercises can I do and this kind of thing. And I said, what we're doing right here.
Right.
But I said, the biggest thing right now is let's figure out how we can get you in these positions you need to be in so that they're not hurting. I said, the one thing that I would ask you to kind of consider is to ask yourself if you can not put up with this. Because I said, you're so used to kind of pushing through that you're really putting up with a lot more than you need to. And so if you can kind of pay attention and figure out, oh, I'm sitting here and this is bothering me, what are my choices? Rather than, well, I just have to finish this last report before I get up.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
said, what are your choices? So we talked about them. She likes to cross her legs. And I said, I'm not going to tell you not to cross your legs. All I'm going to tell you is that can you sit in 3 other positions besides crossing your legs so that you have some choices to move around on your chair a bit and see if this will settle down. So she agreed that, she could uncross her legs some. And I said, and you'll cross them back, and that's fine. I said, just not for 45 minutes or 2 hours in the same position, because that doesn't work for you.
Mm-hmm.
You can do it for, 15 minutes, whatever. If it starts to bother you, get out of that position, change it.
Mm-hmm.
She came up with some ideas, but as we kind of were, about how she could change kind of some of her stuff. And, she was worried about wearing shoes. And I said, it's going to be the same thing. I said, whether you're wearing some heels or whether you're wearing flats, what feels better when you stand? And she went right to it. When I come forward onto my, the balls of my feet, it takes the pain away completely.
Yeah.
And I said, then do that. That's
Right.
great. You've got that pattern, that movement pattern. So I said, in your walking, pretend like you're walking into the wind. So that you're you're not hanging back and dropping back on the back of your heels all the time.
Mm-hmm. It's a great analogy.
If you start to feel that little, that bit again as you're walking, as soon as that starts to come on, just go forward again.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to stop, just go forward. So, or I said, or stop and do a few bendovers.
Yes. Yeah, like a reset. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So then we came up with that. So you can imagine here, the trigger stuff is, of course, just when you have pain. Doesn't really matter what you're doing.
Right.
That's when you need to go and do some of those resets. So her resets turned into be bendovers. Then she wanted to explore cat cow, but she didn't want to get on all hands and knees. So we did it on the countertop, and she was delighted with that.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I love that exercise, but I'm not getting on my hands and knees at work. And it's like, I get it. I totally get it.
I know.
And I said, but when you're at home or you've been on the ladder, why don't you drop into something like, cat cow on the hands and knees, or maybe even a child's pose. So played around with those, and she absolutely loved it. It just it took her issues away immediately. Then she figured out that she could sit in her chair and bend over. And
yes, totally.
So so we kind of, the biggest thing for her was to just kind of get her into the mindset that you can make changes right now, and you can begin to interrupt this cycle throughout the day. But getting her to kind of buy, I didn't really tell her what to do about the painting. I suggested a few things, and I said, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? And she goes, well, what I think about it is that I'll just tell my husband to do it. And I said, well, yes, but your husband's over there painting on his side of the wall too. So I said, I love the thought process, but there are times when you're going to get up on the ladder. So she kind of got the idea once she realized that if she could get out of that position, that it actually would calm things down. And I said, this will calm down. It will get better. And then we can, because she was, one of the things she said, I really probably should, and I want to do some more strength training.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, that's great. I'm in. I said, this is your first part of it. You have to be able to stand on this leg without it hurting before you can start.
Yep.
You got to be able to do these things with less pain or with minimal pain again before we can start loading, because otherwise we're going to load a bad pattern and it's not going to feel good.
Right.
And it's not that the pattern itself is inherently bad, but it's irritable to you.
Yep.
So we talked a little bit about it, and then she really, being this really high thinking person, said, I just want to know what's wrong. And I said, okay. I said, you tell me what's wrong. So she kind of just looked at me and she goes, well, when I stand this way and when I do this, it bothers me. And then when I sit, it bothers me. I said, yeah, and that's what's wrong. But she wanted like the anatomical, biomechanical, like diagnosis thing. And I said, all it is that simply whatever happened 20, 30 years ago, who knows? I said, maybe it was the way you carried your two kids. Nobody knows. I said, but for whatever reason, you had some joint nerve irritation, and it just set up into a little bit of a sensitivity.
Mm-hmm.
Over time, everything's healed. We know things heal. We're an organism. We are a living, breathing carbon organism. We are not a mechanical car. We can adapt. And I said, and you've adapted beautifully. Yep. But you've gotten to the point where right now, with everything you have going on, you can't adapt anymore, and that's why it's irritable again.
Yep. And she's probably sitting, since she's right-handed, in that sort of side bent right position.
Well, then the mouse on the right side,
totally.
The whole thing.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's funny because a question for you, did you ever think of telling her when she was on, not that I would do this, but it just came to me, of having her, giving her a support on her back, lumbar support, when she was on the ladder at all? I'm not sure I would do it, but it just crossed my mind to ask you that.
No, it didn't, because I was trying to do everything I could to give her the ability to make these changes across her day,
right,
easily, quickly, because this is not a patient person. This isn't somebody who's going to sit and do 30 sets of transverse abdominis, whatever. I mean, no. She needed to understand what was happening and know how to make changes immediately.
Mm-hmm.
That was going to make a difference.
Right, and give her her power back.
Right, and let's see where she ends up. So fast forward, that's where we left it. She was thrilled. She said she went home. So she went home and talked to her husband. I saw her at another event later that we actually ended up attending at the same time for different reasons. My husband and her stuff kind of had a joint thing that we ended up in the same room at the same time, and she knows my husband because of some work that they've done together. And so we were at the same event together, and she came over and sat down next to me, and she goes, I'm not going to try to be a patient, but I just have to tell you, it was really funny. She goes, that next day after I saw you, and that first day and that next day after I saw you, I felt so good. And so I called my daughter and I said, let's go. And we did a 5-mile walk. Oh, and then she said, and then that night I paid for it. And I said, well, you tell me what happened. And she goes, I overdid it. And I didn't listen. And I said, well, you got excited. And that's what humans do. It's like, I feel good. Let's do everything. Yay, And then our system is like, no, not so much. So, but she said that she said then for the next few days, I was like, paid attention and did all the things that I was supposed to do. That you told me to do, did the bend overs. She goes, I'll tell you, the biggest thing that really makes a difference for me right now is the swaying forward. She goes, that just does it, and I just love it. And it's so fast and easy for her to do. So that's where she was at that time, and that wasn't a real appointment. So then she came in another week later to see me. And she said, in talking to my husband, it was really funny because everybody keeps asking me, I've been raving about you. Everybody keeps asking me, well, what is it that she did? And she goes, she didn't do anything. All she did was sit and listen to my story for a long time. And then we got up and we did like these little simple movement things, and everything started to get better. So
Less is more, less is more.
It's just really funny. So basically what we did was she was still struggling. She goes, I hate this one-legged standing thing. And I said, okay, let's change it. Let's do something a little bit, something, because I don't want you to hate things. But she actually was coping with it much better, So we kind of changed it up, and we started looking at doing it in, some different positions. I had her actually put her back to the wall and start working on it. That seemed to do it for her. And then I said, now that you can stand on one leg with your back on the wall, just see if you can kind of come forward. And then she started saying, hey, look, I can actually lean forward on my foot just like I do on both feet.
Right. Good,
so
good.
She just needed it, that thing in front of her, and the hands on the wall just wasn't strumming her central nervous system much. So I've oftentimes taken people and put them in a corner, so that they can kind of like, they've got the boundaries of the corner, or put their back on the wall, or do something just a little bit different. So or sometimes I actually even take them, so like if it's the right leg, I'll have them stand with their left side against the wall, or towards, or the left side facing the wall, and maybe even just stick their hand out, the left hand out. It's kind of a neuro trick I learned. We called them with people who have had strokes or CVAs. Some of them are pushers, and the pushers, for those of you who have ever treated neurological patients, know exactly what I'm talking about. But when they stand up, their good side pushes them into their affected side. So their midline is distorted over to the affected side. It's like crazy. And people like try to put thing and try to hold them up on that side. And the more you hold them up on their affected side, the more they push. Right. And I thought, so sometimes but then what we did in rehab always was we put all the support on the other side, the right side, the left side. So that, they would just stand there, and they would actually start to shift over to that side. Because it was all over there, and so it started them exploring that side. It's really kind of interesting, because most of the time with CVAs, what ends up happening is they over rely on their good side, and the affected side is the one that kind of just gets drug along. Pushers are the opposite. Pushers were always my most favorite ones to work with, because it was just like you had to really think completely opposite with them.
Yeah, you want to increase awareness of one side of the brain over the other.
So when we're thinking about one-legged stance and moving and shifting weight, but basically load transfer, that's what we're doing.
Right, totally.
These are just tests of load transfer. So sometimes I'll actually, because there's balance aspect to it, I'll actually just have them use the side that's not affected or not painful. Let them use the fingertip on the wall, or the fingertips on the wall as they're doing it. It's not, for her, the whole thing in front of her just wasn't working.
So she stood. So she stood with her two fingers on her left side, or 2 fingers on the wall, and stood on her right leg.
Okay.
Yeah,
so we started with her back on the wall. And that seemed to help her just figure out how to she just needed, it's a novel input to the system.
It's like it's like using a cane. You use it on the opposite side, so you stick the opposite, but you're
try it here, or try it out there, or try it up underneath here. So that got it going, and so she was, but she had already done some practicing. She had already done all this forward lean stuff, and so her vestibular system was already changing. Because it's resetting to the idea that she can stand in the back and she can stand in the front on her feet. So that was changing. She said that when she could do it, and she was honest, she said it probably happened about 30% of the time. I would come down off the ladder and move it over. When I did, I would get immediate results. And she goes, but then you know how it is. You're just like trying to hurry up, and then So, but she, she's still working on it. She goes, we're almost through. And I said, I know, but I don't want. I want you to still feel comfortable and sleep too while you're almost through. I don't want you falling off the ladder. So
I know.
But anyway, so we've made some great progress, and I see her next week, I believe. And it'd be interesting to see how she's feeling with walking and some of the other stuff. But
yeah, it's fantastic.
She's a lot of fun to work with.
It's so funny. We've talked a lot in the podcast about center of mass and AP and lateral and shifts and whatever and translations, and I think that is so important. I often find with myself, I'll favor one side over the other. We all do, and what I do sometimes is when I have the person in front of me, I will explore that AP movement and lateral movement, and then I'll sort of center them in my own brain. I match my feet to theirs, and sometimes I'll even close my eyes, but I'll just try to center them, and then I let go and I see where they go, and whether it's relevant or not, that's how we figure it out, right? Obviously, her center of mass was important for her, relevant to her story. So it may not be for other people, but I always think that's an easy thing to do. The first thing you do, just because some people, you don't rely on the vision with this. You need to literally put your hands on the person. At least this is how I do it. Marry your feet to theirs. Just test the limits of their side to side AP. Just see how they move, and then just let go and see where they land. If they stay straight, I mean, it's all about how you approach the person, but that's one of the first things I actually do, no matter what their story is, because I just like to see where the person hangs out. That's all. That's what I do. So, and I, in our last podcast with Jackie, when she was running, she had her weight on her heels. I mean, it's important to bring this to the person's awareness, if it's relevant.
Right.
That's where the critical thinking comes in. Is it relevant? So this is great. Loved it. Loved it. Thank you, Susan.
All right. You're welcome.
Cool. Well, thank you everybody for listening.
Yep.
We will see you next time.
Take care.
Bye.
Drop us a line.
Yep. Love to hear from you.
All right.
Bye.